Hi, Lorraine Smith of Tourmaline and Time Quilts here, and I want to take a little bit of time today to talk to you about rotary cutters. I know we all think what's a rotary cutter is a rotary cutter. Well, yes and no. First thing, let's talk a little bit about size and what that size does matter on a rotary cutter. First off, one of the most common sizes here is a 60 millimeter rotary cutter. This one happens to have the nice handy dandy ergonomic handle on it so that when you pull it, the blade comes out so you don't cut yourself. This particular one here, regardless of the manufacturer, is meant to cut up to 8 layers of fabric. So if you're finding that it's not working, could be one of two reasons. One, you're trying to cut too much, or two, you have a dull blade. Keep that thought in mind, because we're going to go over blades in just a minute. Second here is a 45 millimeter, probably the most comfortable size and the one I use the most, especially when I'm working on piecing. This particular one here, 45 millimeters can go through 6 layers of fabric comfortably. So unless you're doing super intricate piecing, it's probably going to cut just fine through those pieces. Next most common size is 28 millimeters. So what is this little guy used for? When you're making really small cuts. So for those of you who like to do small quilts, miniature quilts, 28 millimeters is the size for you. Now, some people get into issues where they get really uncomfortable with their hands, or they need to do something a little more intricate, in which case you can get some here. This one has a lovely little handle on it that you can insert your finger through, and it allows you to use it so you can kind of guide through. This takes a little bit of getting used to. This one happens to be, I believe, 22 millimeters. I personally prefer this little guy here for 2 reasons. One, it has this nice sharp end here, which hopefully you can see, but this nice sharp end here allows you to score your fabric. By scoring, it means you draw a line on it without cutting through it, so it kind of marks where you want to go with things. And then it has this itty bitty little blade on it, okay? This one happens to be 18 millimeters. It's a great little size. It's either 18 or 14, but it is a wonderful little size when you're doing curved work. So curved work, you can use a 28 or you can use something smaller, but your big ones are not going to work on your curves. So if you're doing any sort of curve work, whether it be for appliques or curved piecing, you want the smaller ones. They can do the curves in the corners in the way that the big blades can't. So that's why size matters. Now the next thing is, what type of blade? Most of us buy ours and they have a straight blade on it, meant to do a straight cut. You can purchase additional blades, so you don't have to change your cutter. All you have to do is change your blade. And when you change your blade, you can get all sorts of neat things. This happens to be a pinking blade. Okay, so I could pink my fabrics. I tend to do that only for art projects, not for quilting projects. But you can get different cuts that you can make with your rotary cutter. So watch for that if you want to do something a little different. Now, remember we talked in the beginning about, well, maybe you might be trying to cut too much, or maybe your blade is a little bit dull. So over here, I took some strips of fabric, and what you'll see, this lovely mess here, is what I just tried to cut. So if you, like me, sit here and you're trying to cut, and you've lined everything up, and you're having to press hard. When you do this, you're pressing hard, and you have to really press hard to get the cut you want, and you're still left with these little jagged chenille-like things. Guess what that means? It means it is time to change your blade. Now, this is not something I take on lightly, so we're going to go through how you change your blade. First thing you want to do is get the right blade. Okay, they do come in different sizes, and they come in multiples per pack. Now, you notice I tipped that into my hand. These are all very sharp. I think there's 5 of them in here, and they're all stuck together. How you get them apart is you slide them, just like this. You slide it off, step 1. You carefully set the others back in their container, okay? And you put them aside. Last thing you want is these things laying around, okay? Now, I have a pair of tweezers here to help me with this next bit so I don't have to hurt myself. There is not necessarily a right or wrong side on this. There is machine oil on these, so if you've put them onto your cutting mat or anything like that, you'll want to wipe it off when you're done so that you don't have any excess oil sitting around. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the nut, okay? You hold one side and you turn the other. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, works even on rotary cutters, okay? And we're going to drop that out. You notice I'm trying really hard not to touch the blade. There is a little thing here. It goes back in this way. You'll also note that my rotary cutter has a lot of dirt and grime on it. Now is the perfect time, because there's no blade in there, to give it a little bath. Why not? It deserves one too. Okay, we're all cleaned up. We have our old blade. Now, our old blade is really still quite sharp. It might not like the fabric as much, but it'll still do a number on your fingers. I like to use old wipe containers because they have this lovely little gadget in the side which prevents things from tipping out so easily. And I just stick my blades in there, okay? So that keeps them so that they're not going to go anywhere, all right? I've used detergent bottles and others. Detergent ones tend to have a little bit bigger opening, so sometimes those work a little better. This one's a little bit small for what we're doing, but I'm not gonna push because I don't wanna hurt my fingers. So for 45 millimeters, these are probably okay. 60 millimeters, you might wanna think of something a little larger. We're going to take here our blade, and again, using something to help me out with this, slide it over to the edge here, because I don't really want to touch that blade edge, okay? So we're going to set it on, okay? We're going to find our little guy here. It goes on like so. I'm going to put this through the opposite way, okay? Put our little nut back on and just tighten her down. Now, the nice thing is, you can make these right-handed or left-handed, depending upon which way you cut. Okay, I tend to put mine on this side because I want the blade so I can see it up against the rotary cutter, up against the ruler here. So that's why I put mine on this side, because it's on the side of the ruler. If you're cut the other direction, you want to make sure your ruler's where you can kind of see it. You want it up as close as you can get against your ruler. So, let's see if it worked. I'm going to put my ruler back up here. Again, I have 8 layers of fabric here. Not cutting very hard, and it came off without a hitch. Nothing's bad about this one. So, if you're finding you're pushing too hard, you either have too much fabric or you need to change your blade, and do it carefully. Hope this helps. Have a great day. Happy quilting.